Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Matt Scott. Now, this is always a fun episode for us every year when we take a look at the prior 12 months and talk about the vehicles that we've tested, the things that we've learned, the places that we've traveled, some of the changes in the overland industry. In this particular episode, we get to talk about the very first car that Matt ever drove and how he got a hold of it. We also talk about my INEOS Quartermaster project with the Scout camper. We go into some information on factory overland vehicles. We just kind of talk about how things are going with overlanding and the things that we have most enjoyed over the last 12 months. But most important, we just want to thank you all, our listeners, for being a part of the Overland Journal podcast, for sending us all of your comments and feedback. You can reach me at Instagram at scott.a.brady, and you can also reach Matt Scott at MattExplore on Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to what 2025 will bring. And a special thanks to onX for their support of this week's podcast. Going further on your adventures is about having the right tools. The onX off-road app's intuitive maps make it easy to find trails and disperse camping. And their offline maps give you full GPS navigation capabilities, even without cell coverage. Personally, I use onX for every trip in North America because I always know who owns or manages the land that I'm traveling on. It also makes for a reliable track recorder, and I can filter the trails based on the four-wheel drive or motorcycle that I'm using. On my most recent trip in the Quartermaster, I used the onX to find trails near where I was staying in Joshua Tree. I used the difficulty rating and the elevation to determine which trails are best suited to the vehicle and the weather. Thanks again, onX, for your support of the Overland Journal podcast. We are back.
We're back.
We are back at it, man. So glad we get to sit at the table and have a look back on 2024.
Yeah, it was an interesting year.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm sitting here and my dad's in the hospital and I'm thinking about him. And it's just this, for those that are listening, it's just this reminder to spend that time with your family. Yeah. I'm just so lucky that I spend as much time with my dad as I do. But I think he's going to be okay. He's getting some heart procedures. He's getting some heart procedures done. I did a podcast with him that aired on Father's Day, and he's been just such an important part of my life. But it's just really important to remember that, it's the people in our life and the experiences that we have that really define our life, not the stuff that we buy. So
stuff doesn't always make you happy.
Yeah, rarely.
I mean,
there has been stuff that has made me happy.
I'm rarely sad in a 911.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it doesn't make everything.
Maybe they become neutral at points in time.
Yeah.
Well, like your Earth Roamer is something that genuinely has brought you experiences. It's brought you closer with Laura by traveling together.
Yeah, the Earth Roamer is like a boat, right?
Yeah.
It's like our little cabin that we get to park in a bunch of different places.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually incredibly interested in the boat thing lately as well. I've been watching all of Tim and Kelsey's stuff with.
Well, we got to go. We got to get you to the sailboat.
Oh no, I'm horribly seasick.
But it's on a lake. It
throw
won't,
up.
I have the wristband. I have the wristband.
Good luck.
We'll clean it up.
I will park on the dock.
Okay, we could do that. We could just sit in the dock.
No, I've been following. What's their YouTube channel called? It's,
something Sunrise now because they changed it.
It was Dirt Sunrise, and now it's
Shoot.
Heck,
but it's great. They're great. They're great human beings. I mean, Kelsey used to work here.
They've got this little catamaran, and I'm just in
awesome.
Love with it because it just seems so idyllic.
Yes, it does.
Except for the motion sickness.
No, that one shot they got at sunset with the Statue of Liberty behind them.
Oh yeah,
that was epic. Yeah. No, they're doing some neat stuff, and we're gonna have Sailing Uma on the podcast here in the next couple weeks. They have done sailing around the world, high latitude stuff up to Svalbard and everything else like that. And while they're rebuilding their sailboat, they're traveling around in a Defender 110.
Oh, cool.
They've got a great YouTube channel, so they're scheduled to be on the podcast. That'll be a fun one. So I just think we're seeing a lot more Overlanders being like, oh, like the sailing thing is interesting. For me, It was the only solution that I had during COVID because I couldn't travel internationally or not much.
Yeah, it was hard.
So it was hard to do. So I'm like, yeah, let's hop on a sailboat and cross the Pacific.
Yeah.
You're like, no thanks.
No, I'm good.
I think that wrist unit might work for you though.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll
see.
We'll try it out. We'll try it out.
Yeah. Interesting year though. I think that overlanding as like an industry continues to mature.
Yeah.
And
it had a better like second half of the year for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe what's cool about where things are going is it's definitely not, there was this crazy growth during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But I've started to kind of explain it to people that there's like the camping travel side of overlanding, and then there's like the automotive restyling side.
Yeah, sure.
What I notice is that all of my friends that maybe got into this during COVID or around that period, the guys that are still around are the ones that are traveling or camping, whether that's domestically, internationally, whatever. They're kind of around, but the guys and girls that were maybe, I want to throw a roof rack on here and this lift, and they're more.
And I'm going to become an influencer.
Yeah, they're more. It's like the influencers kind of dying.
Yeah,
just because Instagram's changing. But,
right.
Not to like disparage. I have a lot of friends that are influencers and whatever.
Oh, I think a lot of them add value.
Yeah,
just if you're doing it for the right reason,
the ones
then
that like
work.
Never used their stuff. Like that's just the side of the space that kind of seems to be fading.
Yeah,
almost for the better. Like I'm a little bit more. I think after 24, I'm a little more positive.
Yeah.
On like I enjoy it more.
Yeah.
I'm not. There's fewer long travel Tacomas with roof tents. But maybe that's a good thing.
I think it's good that people are getting back to what overlanding is, which is travel. So if you were doing it for styling, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
people can do whatever they want. But I think that we're just seeing the industry as it matures now coming back to a bit more of its roots, and people are going to want to travel around the world in cars for a very long time. Yeah. So it's not like it's going to die. It's just it's becoming a little bit more of what it should be, which is not four-wheel drive enthusiasts that are putting a roof tent on their vehicle. It's more people who are travelers that happen to use a vehicle. So
I see, and maybe I'm more aware of it than I ever. Well, I guess we've been doing this for a while, but the amount of Europeans that I see traveling now, they really maybe they eschewed the vehicle modification side and really hooked onto the travel side.
Yeah,
I mean, there's reasons why Europeans travel more. They generally have a little bit more of a, how do you say it? I'm not going to say
time off.
Time off. They have more time off. Yeah. So the amount of people that I see traveling, they all like there always has been, but there's now this massive wave of people that, they ship into like Halifax or something like that in the spring, and then they drive up to Alaska, and then they all work their way down. I see so many coming through Prescott, and a lot of guys and girls are in Baja now.
Yeah.
And that seems to be growing, and I think that that's really cool.
I think that's important. And I think we talk about this on the podcast a lot, but when you look at your budget for the year that you're going to spend on overlanding, make sure that you are covering all of the travel that you want to do before you spend any money on modifications. Yeah. So like a great example is, tell us your newest purchase. Yeah. Your newest purchase.
I think we'll get into the newest purchase because there's always a new purchase with me. Vehicle ADD Matt. I think that these 2024 is also the year of this like factory overlander. It's been a trend that we're seeing, but there's been a lot of those concepts were really realized or made available this year. And it's so easy to go do it now.
It is.
You brought up your friends that are traveling in a Defender 110.
Yeah.
10 years ago, you would have bought a Defender 110 or a Troopy. You would have had to have this dual battery system, and you would have had to have built all of this stuff. Now you grab like a lithium battery pack, a fridge, and you kind of go.
Yep.
You know, you obviously have to.
That was what I did in Africa.
Yeah,
it was literally a Dometic battery pack,
yeah.
a Dometic 25-liter fridge, and some bedrolls, and off I went.
So easy, right? Like, I mean, I think that the Grenadier. So I bought a Grenadier. I guess that's the thing. We've obviously talked about him a lot. Scott's driving a Quartermaster right now. I don't want to say I bought one on a whim. I had always been very interested, but as I maybe on the podcast,
you even had an early reservation.
I had an early reservation, but there was no dealer in Arizona.
Yep.
And I don't like going to Southern California.
Right.
Like, well, I don't like driving to Southern California for a car that has a
for
problem.
an oil change, yeah.
For an oil change or for whatever. So there's a dealer now in Phoenix. You know, it was a car dealer experience. Like there was nothing. I know INEOS is maybe trying to have like enthusiast-based dealers. No, this was like, but this is also brand new. Like they were like
They're trying to get sorted out.
Yeah, they were operating out of a car wash bay, so to speak. You know, it was really small. It was fine. You know, the car's interesting.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, we're gonna do a deep dive.
Yeah, we'll do a deep dive on that. But you know, vehicles like the Grenadier, there's the AEV. You know, there's both the Canyon and the Colorado.
Yep.
Those things are so cool.
I had one for a month, an AT4X AEV, and I think it's the best like do it all daily driver that I've ever used because it was shockingly comfortable. Like you could remote start it and you'd get in there and the heated steering wheel had heated the steering wheel. The seats were heated and they're cooled, and it's got radar cruise control, and it's got lane
everything.
It's got
35s.
Yes,
you can get hydraulic bump stops on the thing if you want.
That's right.
It's crazy.
It was very, very good. Incredibly capable off road.
You know, I think one of the things that we've been the concept that we've been pushing. It's not that you shouldn't modify your vehicles, but part of the ethos of overlanding has always been, you know, kind of like that OEM plus mentality of you don't want to have Heim joints and racing shocks and all this kind of stuff because you're going to have to rebuild and service when you're putting miles on these vehicles. And now we have all of this OEM engineering. I mean, you can go buy a Tacoma outfitted by ARB.
Right.
You know, the what do they call it?
Trail Hunter.
Trail Hunter, yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah.
Like I drove one a couple. It is really good. It's very good. And what's so interesting, we'll talk a little bit about Midsize for a second, but like this is the best Tacoma that they have. I mean, the first gen Tacoma was groundbreaking. Like it was
just such a perfect size.
It was really, really good, and there was everybody else in the segment was terrible. So that Tacoma, like the one that I owned,
well, you were competing with what, like the Chevy, the Colorado back. Not even they weren't even around the Ford Ranger and stuff.
No, it was like a standard
S10.
Ford. Yeah, exactly. These
S10.
were cars that were vehicles that were really, really poorly engineered, and just like for mass market. And then, you know, I remember my 2004 Tacoma quad cab with a rear locker. It was like the factory Overlander of its day.
Yeah.
It was the first factory Overlander, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, and as far as like a U.S. only model. And then, you know, the Tacomas were always reliable. But now, like, all of this competition has come into the space. This is the best Tacoma that they've ever made. You know, and I've driven them all. Yeah. And it's incredibly capable, incredibly comfortable, powerful, good fuel economy.
Great. The motor's so much better.
Yep, so much better. More cogs in the transmission, bigger tires, better suspension, more payload. Like the Trail Hunter that I tested was at 1,215 pounds, which is a 25% improvement.
With steel bumpers.
Yes.
That's with skid plates.
That's right.
That's with slider. I mean, like, there's a lot of inclusions there that you would have to otherwise take away from the payload of a comparable vehicle.
Exactly, and it's got it right out of the factory. So the Tacoma is better than it's ever been before, but the competition is more intense than it's ever been before. So now the Tacoma is an also ran of all of these other vehicles. The new Ford Ranger Raptor, unbelievable, and a 1,400-pound payload.
And not like it's not horribly expensive either.
No,
like
it's the same price. It's actually less expensive than the Trail Hunter.
Yeah, and like that's obviously a lot of money. I mean, you could. There's a lot of vehicles that you could just go buy and drive around the world with the budget of a Ford Ranger Raptor. Let's make sure we always say that kind of stuff.
For
we
sure.
don't need it. But for a lot of people that have like us, like we work. We have we're not always on trips.
Yep.
They're great vehicles for that. They're such dual purpose machines.
Which is why I really like midsize. I'm such a fan. I'm such a fan of a midsize that I bought the Scout camper with the intention of eventually
Figuring
buying
out
which one I'm going to buy. So that's why I decided that the next main gear review test for Overland Journal is going to be the midsize trucks. So I've been spending months and months and months. So look at the lineup now. You've got Quartermaster, Trial Master, which dual battery systems, triple diff locked, factory snorkel. It fits a 34 with no lift. That's what's on the truck right now, no lift. 1,800 pounds of payload. And then you've got Chevy Colorado AEV Bison. You've got GMC Canyon AT4X AEV. On 35s, factory available jounces, Multimatic suspension, front and rear diff locks. They're unbelievable. And then you've got a Trail Hunter.
Yeah, you still have Gladiator too, and they'll give you, if you buy a ham sandwich at the Jeep dealer, they'll give you a Gladiator for $12.
I know, it's so sad because it's such a good.
It's actually really good.
It's just the best value, but like if anybody is looking to buy something of value, like you could buy a Willys Gladiator and drive around the world for the money it would take to buy the Quartermaster.
Yeah, like pretty comfortably drive around the world.
Oh yeah, so it's a value. Like I was seeing them at the dealership here. Jeff Simpson, mutual friend, he's been involved in the industry at York Jeep here in Prescott, and they had them discounted by $10,000. They were $44,000 for a Willys Gladiator. That to me seems like the bargain of the century.
I mean, they did get expensive during COVID.
Yeah, for sure.
The Jeep products, I did see something where
that was a mistake on their part.
Where the JL started in the 20s when it was first launched, and now there's models in the hundreds.
Yes.
And you're like
that's what hurt them.
That's where the Grenadier starts to really make sense to me. Is I love Jeeps.
I
mean, I really do. I've owned a lot of them, but I was looking at this, or I was looking at maybe a 392.
Yep.
I actually prefer how the Grenadier powertrain works. It's the same transmission. This has a BMW straight six with a turbo that on paper has
280 horsepower.
Yeah, less horsepower than the naturally aspirated V6 that's in the Gladiator, but it's how it's tuned and where it makes its power.
Not even close.
I just I prefer it to the 392, which makes its power in all the places where I'm not using it.
Yeah.
But
although the 392 is really fun.
It's really fun.
It's just not travel. It's not a great travel vehicle.
It's really fun, but by the time you run it through AEV, it's $50,000 more. They're $100,000 now for this final edition thing, and then you go and you spend. It's a Jeep. You're gonna rip everything off of it, and you're gonna spend another $20,000 or $30,000 on it, and that's G-Wagon money, man.
Yeah.
They have the white plastic terrible hardtop interior that is like a carryover from the TJ or the YJ.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting because it's funny where GM, Stellantis or whatever, they really took overlanding very seriously at first. They've always supported the community really well, and they're great people and whatever, but they're now on the back foot in nearly everything.
Yep.
There's I've had a couple of their HD Rams, and they're just so dated now. The body itself and the bulk of the vehicle goes back how long?
Yeah, 10 years.
10 plus?
Yeah.
They're supposedly doing a new transmission next year. Well, here we are end of December, and it's supposed to be a 25 model year, and it's still not even out.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see where, that company goes. But, everybody else is just really excelling in the segment.
And then you look at this other interesting news, even in the last couple of days, is the fact that Honda's looking at merging with Nissan, which I think will be great. I think it'll be great for both brands, actually.
Yeah, Nissan has made efforts. Nissan just has always been a price point brand. brand.
Yeah.
They're like the Kirkland of cars. They're everything you need, nothing you really don't, at a pretty decent price.
And they're reliable. Like that little Frontier, like the Frontier, we talk about midsize again. The Frontier is the only compact pickup that's sold in America anymore. Because everything else is gigantic.
I never see them.
Yeah.
I forget that Nissan exists sometimes.
If you go to California, they're all over the place, but they
Yeah.
don't really sell a lot of them in Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, geez, I need to.
But
get
a little Pro 4X with a rear locker, and
Yeah.
they got like nice little Hankook, ATs on them, and 17-inch wheels, and you can get little rock sliders for them. I mean, they're pretty cool. And I think if they can get some footing with Honda and get some of the shackles taken off, like I just went on the Nissan Armada launch a couple weeks ago. Now, the Armada that we got in the United States was always just like a value-driven large SUV 7-passenger, and I think it met a lot of people's needs.
Yeah,
But what they just did though is they took the rest of the world patrol, and they gave us all of those hard parts. So when you get a Pro 4X Armada, which is going to be coming out here in the next couple weeks for consumers to buy, it's going to have almost a 33-inch tall tire. It's going to have a rear locking differential. It's got multi-mode traction control system, center locking differential, 8,600 pounds or so of towing. It has a really nice turbo V6 in it. So like it's one of the most significant leaps in overall comfort performance attributes that I've seen in a vehicle in a long time. I was really impressed by it. They gave it a bunch more approach angle, departure angle. They gave it multi-height air suspension, long travel air suspension. And so it gives it like another 2.5 inches of ground clearance when you put it into off-road mode. So they've really refined it. Like they've taken all the best of the rest of the world patrol and
kind of brought it here.
And they brought it here.
They should have done that a while ago.
Yes, they should have.
Yeah, because the patrol's a viable candidate. Like it's something that you could throw into that list of kind of factory ready to go vehicles.
Yeah, those Y63s the Y61 is if I got that right. That was the one that was the solid axle patrol that they had in Australia and
they
Middle
were
East
they were like an 80 series in a lot of ways that kept getting built. When I worked for Pat Callanan down in Australia at the time,
he was a big fan of those.
He was sponsored by them, so I got to drive one for quite a bit, and they were good. They were just they were nine. I feel like the Nissan formula is really simple. It's like 90% of a Toyota at 80% of the price.
Yeah, sure.
Like, and that's not a bad thing. If you're going to be 90% of any car manufacturer, be 90% of Toyota.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, I guess just again to go back to like the 2024 and recap thing, like there's just so many applicable vehicles for this segment.
So good.
That not only can drive around the world, but can drive to work and can drive to job site or whatever you're using the vehicle for.
Look at the new 250 Land Cruiser. I mean, it's just like the stuff.
That one's
the hits
really
the hits just keep coming. The hits just keep coming. The Grenadier's great. The Colorado's great. They're just
I looked really
so much
hard
better
at the 250 Land Cruiser. I still call it the Prado for whatever reason. But,
it is a Prado.
Yeah.
Prado Land Cruiser.
I think the price point's great on it.
Yeah.
I like the form factor. People bought the GX because it was a 4Runner with a little bit more power and a better form factor. But this is just like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I think it'll be very popular for the segment. I think it's a no-brainer for travel. Like, even though I just bought this Grenadier, if I was like, I just have this, I'll call it a litmus test. Like, if you're going to drive to Ushuaia tomorrow, what would you take? I'm like, I would still probably take the Grenadier, but that 250 Prado would just be like sitting there, like kind of like whispering in my ear, like, you'd have no problems with me, like, because it would just work.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. And they sell it in all of those countries.
Yeah,
that's the nice thing. There's a couple things that I think some of the more diehards have missed with the 250. They're like, oh, it's not a Land Cruiser. Well, it is a Land Cruiser. They've had Land Cruiser Prados around the world since the 90s.
90s, yeah.
Since the 90s. So, you drove that one, that 70 series. Prado that we had, which is a Land Cruiser too. So they've been called Land Cruisers. They're a J series. They're not the heavy duty 300 series, but they are built with that intention in mind of being a Prado for the rest of the world. So they're a very reliable platform. The fact that they're also being sold in like almost 200 countries. So
everywhere now.
You're going to be able to get service on this thing if you did need it. If you needed, if you broke a CV axle or you had problems with the springs or whatever, you're going to be able to find that. The fact that it has a front sway bar disconnect really improves the performance off-road. It is a little bit low. Like we got to talk about some of the downsides too. So like the ground clearance is like 8.7 inches, which is very low. So
It's
when
less
I was
than a Subaru Crosstrek.
yes, and like not to mince words, it is low. Like the car is low, and when we were just doing some mild off-roading in Colorado, there was a lot of scraping of the bottom of the car. And the lowest part of the car is actually at the front where the skid plate comes down to the A-arms. So this vehicle really benefits, not so much from lifting it that much, because I don't think people should lift it, but there's a huge wheel well. So stick some like 34 1050s in there, and then all the problems go away. Yeah. And it's the same with the Grenadier. The Grenadier will take a 34 by 1050 17 with no lift.
Yeah.
That's what I've got on the Quartermaster right now, and it works perfect. But that 250 is sweet. I mean, and the GX is freaking awesome.
The GX, like, I like the Land Cruiser more than I like the GX.
Oh, that's interesting, because I'm the opposite.
Yeah, like I think a lot of my friends would probably think I would like the GX more, but I like the 1958 base Land Cruiser. Like,
There's a lot
I don't
to be said
want
for that.
anything else on it. I want the base motor because it's totally enough. I just like.
I think even the base one has a locker in the rear.
They're like 50,
58, 56, yeah.
And but like that's Wrangler territory.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's a lot of money. Everything's expensive these days, right? But I think that it's good value. I mean, whereas you used to go out and buy a 4Runner. I mean, I guess there's a 4Runner now.
Yeah.
I do not understand that dynamic.
Well, and I didn't either.
I do, but I don't.
Well, I didn't either, so I asked Toyota. I'm like, can you explain to me what is your internal messaging on the difference between the Land Cruiser and the 4Runner?
And I think it's worth to say, like, they're on the same, for listeners that don't know, they're on the same frame. They have the same wheelbase. They're made on the same assembly line.
Same engine, same transmission.
Engine, everything.
Yeah. So what was explained to me is that it's purely demographic. So the 4Runner will be a younger buyer. The Land Cruiser will be an older buyer. It'll be a more mature buyer, and I think that that's going to be how it's going to play out. The Land Cruiser will be slightly more utilitarian, whereas the 4Runner will be slightly more kind of fun, modified. The Land Cruiser has more interior storage space.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting
I just can't
difference.
For the life of me understand why. Because the price points are, I'm going to say, identical. Like,
yeah,
I'm not,
we don't know yet.
Like,
but it's
I
close.
thought they released pricing.
Maybe they might have.
Yeah. I just think the form factor, the 250, is what makes it. Like, you have room to live out of that car.
Yeah, it's bigger on the inside.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I think Toyota, like, people know 4Runners, and like they sold like the last year of the previous generation 4Runner, which I think was engineered when you were in grade school.
Yeah.
But that thing, they sold like 180,000 of them. Like they sold so many 4Runners.
Yeah.
And
you can't just remove it.
Yes.
So I guess they're just adding.
I think that's what they're doing. They're just giving you one more option, which like the consumer wins. Like it's not a bad thing in my mind at all. So the consumer wins on that.
Yeah, there's people that really like 4Runners. Like that's their thing. And they offer it in 2-wheel drive, which
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Is maybe something that I wouldn't go for, but if you're just like driving around the suburbs and
you live in SoCal and you're driving to the beach.
Brian Dorr at Gear Junkie did a really good, like highly detailed comparison of the two that kind of helped me sort them. So that's a good.
Go to that resource. I know he did a real deep dive on that.
Yeah. He went Rain Man on it.
That's good though.
Yeah. What else is going on? I mean,
well, the talking about kind of more travel centric, the Trans-Globe Car expedition is still in process. So this is really significant. We've talked about it a little bit on the podcast before. Andrew Picard, ACP. So he's
Andrew Comrie Picard.
Yeah, he's well known in the automotive industry as a professional driver, precision driver. And I talked to him about a similar idea to this trip. I mean, it has to be 10 years ago now. We met in Southern California and just had coffee. And finally, he found a way to make this work using this partner out of Russia. And they ended up driving these like high flotation, giant tired vehicles over the North Pole. So they drove it to the North Pole, and then they finished in Greenland. They were not allowed to take the vehicles into Greenland, so I don't actually know where they ended up yet. Like the vehicles were stuck there.
Yeah.
So they kind of hit pause on that part of the trip, which is interesting because, like, for example, when we did Greenland from the south to the north, we finished about where they came in from the north. Mm-hmm. So I think they ended up on some island because they wouldn't let them get onto the mainland. And then they took some of their other vehicles and they went across Europe. They did a bunch of traveling around Europe. And then they took them by ship to Namibia, and they drove around southern Africa, and they just put them on a ship
because the last
to Antarctica.
update I saw is they were like a couple days stuck in pack ice.
That's right. Which is amazing. Yeah. And the updates are great. So follow them on Instagram. It's a really noteworthy expedition.
Yeah, it's considerable.
Yeah, for them to have driven across, including the North Pole, it has been done once before on a highly specialized vehicle, but that's a very significant accomplishment. It's very, very difficult to do. There's a lot of risk to it, and you have to have just the right year, and they got just the right year, so they were very fortunate.
They left from Canada, but where in Canada did they leave from? It was like Alert or something?
Resolute, maybe.
Resolute, okay, yeah.
And then they went up to the pole and then back down to Greenland. So it's pretty significant accomplishment. And now they're getting ready to try to get this ship to Antarctica so they can unload the vehicles and then drive them across Antarctica, which is awesome. So it's
the thing that's been
neat thing to watch.
Interesting about this trip is you've been able to follow along.
Yes,
because they've had Starlink the entire way.
Yeah,
like that's something that wouldn't have happened. I mean,
even during Expedition 7. Just only 10 years ago.
When I went to Tuck in 22, Starlink existed, but not that far north.
Yep.
You know, it was non-operable. So to be able to like follow with like considerably further north, like you think you're far north in like, you know, in Tuck or Dead Horse, and then you realize like, you know, Nordkap is even further. I mean, you're like halfway up.
That's right.
I mean, it's a considerable achievement, and they definitely deserve
that technology.
recognition for that.
Technology is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and then speaking of Europe, then after I finished the drive across to Africa in the Grenadier.
So you shipped from Djibouti to Greece. And
I
guess
did.
That's kind of
to Athens. Yeah. And that we haven't really talked about that part of the trip yet. So, so we shipped it into Athens, and Tavia and I flew over, and you know, it was a pretty easy process of getting the truck out. The battery was very dead. That is something that I think will need to be worked on, is some of the parasitic draw on that from that vehicle.
You had a really early one, though.
I did, and that maybe they've resolved some of that. But it was so dead that the battery was actually killed. Like, it killed the battery. We couldn't bring it back.
Oh, wow.
So then I'm like taking the battery out, and it's like in this shipping yard. And these guys were amazing. They were so helpful. And he's like, "Hey, just hop in my car with me. I'm taking this like Group 31 battery." And we go to this Bosch, little hole in the wall Bosch place.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they had one.
Yeah.
Like they had a group. They had a AGM Group 31 Bosch battery.
Perfect.
So like 8,000 euros later, I'm out of there with this battery.
Yeah.
I don't remember how much it cost. It was a lot. I think it was like a 500 euro battery. So I'm out, and we drop it in the car, and the thing fires up, and it's back to life now. And which was just, it's always such an exciting feeling to get a vehicle out of a container. Oh, that's another thing that's interesting about the Grenadier. So the Grenadier doesn't really show that it has a neutral position in the transfer case, but it actually has one.
Is that it's underneath?
No, you have to just kind of massage it into the right position. So like the vehicle was in the container and there was no way to go into neutral. Like,
oh, because it's electronic.
That's right. It's all electronic and everything was dead. So fortunately, I was able to just kind of like massage that mechanical shifter into neutral, and then we were able to pull the vehicle out. Most modern vehicles, everything's electronic. So if your battery's dead, you can't get it out of the container unless you drag it out. So I was able to actually roll it out of the container, and then we were able to work on it. But yeah, so then I got it back into Athens. Just finding a place to park it in Athens was a challenge. And I was staying not far from where you and I stayed when we were there with Land Rover, maybe 2019 or 2020, something like that. And 2019 probably. Yeah. And then we drove it through Greece, which was beautiful. It was just incredible. And it's just such a neat country, and it does have its problems, but it never felt unsafe, and it was a great value the whole time. And then we got into after that we went into Albania. Yeah, we went into Albania, and that was a total surprise of the trip. Albania was the surprise of the trip because there is so much overlanding to do there.
Interesting.
And we did the very best overland routes that I've ever done in Europe.
Huh.
Excluding Iceland. So
yeah, I guess that is Europe.
Yeah, kind of half and half.
Yeah.
It's being torn apart by Europe and North America. So Albania was incredible.
Okay.
Beautiful, high mountains, like proper low range.
I've only flown over that, but like, you know, I like geography, and I think I know a little bit about what the world looks like. And I'm like there's snow-peaked mountains.
Albanian Alps. And there's this little town called Teth, I think it's called. And it's like the Swiss Alps of Albania.
We kind of forget about that part of Europe. Like, I feel like Americans just don't really consider it. Like, we'll consider Greece, but we won't. I mean, even going to Croatia for a lot of people is like, oh, it's Croatia. Like, okay.
And Albania is so cheap, and the beaches are just as nice as Croatia. Now, Croatia has a lot of advantages, and we'll get to that in a second. But like when I was in Albania, because you can pay for everything in euros there, even though it's not on the euro, but they take it just like Mexico takes dollars.
Gotcha.
But like you go and you have like a fantastic cappuccino with a croissant, and it's €1. So it's like, it's super cheap. It's super cheap.
And I think that, you know, that's something for travelers really to consider, is that a lot of, with inflation and everything, like a lot of places have gotten like very, very expensive. And to find beautiful places that are, I'm not going to say like Albania's not off the beaten path, but people know about Albania.
Sure.
Right? Like, but it's just interesting to.
It's awesome. You'd love it. You guys would have such a great time.
I know like or Europeans will kind of go down there on their overland travels, but you never really hear about Americans kind of. Because I mean, it's not Eastern Europe. It's
Eastern Europe. Yeah, and it's like on that other side of the Adriatic, and it was super cool because there was this couple from Germany that had a G-Wagon, really bitchin' G-Wagon, and like we saw him at the gas station. We're like, hey, and because I had the Grenadier, and he's like, hey, you know,
hey, we're tough guys. We're in big trucks.
And then I was on this super long, super remote overland route in Albania, and who comes around the corner? The G-Wagon the other direction.
Oh.
So I got to tell him what I experienced on the trail, and he's
Cool.
like, man, it's really rough because his was lifted and everything, and
Yeah.
of course the Grenadier was stock. And I'm like, I think we got it.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know, it's really rough, and of course it was easier than what I had just gone through. So it's all perspective, you know. It's all perspective.
And the Grenadier is pretty good off road.
It is.
G-Wagons are surprisly not.
Well, it doesn't
They
have
don't
as
have a
much
lot of
articulation.
flex.
Yeah, it
Like,
doesn't have the
that's
same
its problem.
articulation. Exactly.
Yeah, because those are radius arms, I think. Front and rear.
Front and rear.
Yeah.
So less articulation. Yeah, and then we went into Montenegro, and then went into Croatia. And Brian Bass, who's been on the podcast a couple times, he got his PhD in archaeology when he was in that area. So he was doing these like early human sites in Croatia, and he was there like after the fall of the wall and everything else like that. So early 90s he's there, and he bought some property in Croatia. So Brian's like, hey, go stay at my house in Korčula, which is this little island. And Korčula is like the old walled city. It was the equivalent of Venice, but on the other side of the Adriatic.
Yeah, because that was all the Venetian.
Yes.
I'm not going to say Venetian Empire, but
100%. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. And so Marco Polo's family had property in this little village of Korčula. So it's like that's where Marco Polo did his like last resupplying before he went east. Like he was literally the first tourist, like the first significant tourist in history. And like trust fund kid. Yeah, basically that's what he was. Like his family had lots of money, and he's like, I'm just gonna start cruising east, and that's what he did. And he wrote about it. And that's exactly what he did. But like Korčula is over the top beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
And it's very reasonably priced. It can get super busy.
I've never been to that. I mean, I've been to Greece, but like I would love to do that.
You'd love it.
Yeah.
And I had never done it either.
Did you camp most of the time, or like where hotel? Because you do get to this point where like there's a cost to camping.
Oh yeah, time usually.
Time, and then in the western states of America, we have like BLM or National Forest. I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But when you have to pay for camping, I'm always like, pay for camping, €20 hotel.
Yeah. By the time I got through Albania, I had decided that I was on vacation.
Okay. Yeah.
So I stopped camping.
Yeah.
And I never camped again until I got back to London. So yeah, once we got through Croatia, then it was Slovenia, Austria. I went to the Grenadier factory in Hambach in France.
Oh, sweet.
And so I watched the Defenders being made, the original classic Defenders being made, and I watched the Grenadier being made. Anybody that thinks that there's any correlation between those two cars, there's zero correlation other than its basic shape.
I do not get, like, I know that in every written story, it's Grenadier is the new Defender. No.
Yeah.
No, it's the G-Wagon that you always wanted.
Like, it's a G-Wagon we can afford. I also wanted to take a brief moment to thank all of you for listening to the Overland Journal podcast. By listening to this podcast and subscribing to the Overland Journal magazine, you're supporting our employee-owned and veteran-owned business. Impartial reviews and in-depth content like this would not be possible without your support. If you enjoy the podcast, I think you'd really love the print magazine as well. And 100% of that subscription price goes back into creating the content like you're listening to right now. And as a special thank you for your loyalty, we're giving 20% off any subscription. And that even includes our special lifetime subscription, which includes numerous lifetime-only benefits. You can go to overlandjournal.com and use the code OverlandPodcast at checkout. Again, that's code OverlandPodcast at checkout, and that'll give you 20% off. I sincerely appreciate your support.
The G-Wagon was kind of on one road, and then the Kardashians happened.
Yeah,
right? And then
that was about the time I wanted to get rid of my G-Wagon.
The Grenadier is the alternate universe in which that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
It's so true.
I mean, there are so many components on that car that I just I feel like I recognize from the G-Wagon.
Yes.
Like the drip rails are I'm not saying it's the same machine, but it's definitely it
was engineered in the same place.
Magna Stair.
Yeah. Magna engineered both cars. So they're going to have a lot of similarities.
The door handles are the same. Like the way you shut it, the doors are the same. Everything feels more G-Wagon. And
but then it looks like great Defender kind of looks, and and a little bit G-Wagon.
Defender-y.
It looks like both.
Yeah, it's the love child, right?
I definitely, in the U.S., in Africa, 9 out of 10 people thought it was a new Defender. In Europe, 9 out of 10 people thought it was a G-Wagon.
Yeah, I've had limited experience, but I've had people say "What's that G-Wagon looking thing?"
Yes, exactly. In the U.S., same thing. Yeah. Very few people know what a classic Defender is, but they do know what a G-Wagon is. But so the the factory was incredible. I mean, it's a Mercedes factory that
and it's
they
kind of like,
purchased.
the way I understand it is like 1 foot is in France where the address is, and then 1 foot is in Germany.
Oh yeah,
It's
like you could throw a rock and hit Germany, and a lot of the people that work there live in Germany.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's an old Mercedes plant. Not old, it's relatively new, but it was a Mercedes plant. And they still do some assembly for Mercedes in the factory, components of like subframes and things like that. But to watch the Grenadier being produced, the amount of robotics that are used, the way that it's welded, the way that it's what I was most impressed by was the corrosion resistance and the painting process.
Yeah.
Like that is at the highest levels. Like it's painted and corrosion resistance like a Mercedes, so it's really, really good.
I enjoy at night detailing cars or something. You know, you have a beer in your garage and you just spending time with yourself. The paint on the Grenadier is actually like I can't find a flaw with it.
It's really good.
It's really actually quite good.
And people wonder like, why does it cost so much money to have the second color on the top, like where you have the roof is a different color.
Yeah.
They paint the entire car. Then they have to run it into this it comes around, it splits off from the assembly line, and it comes around again into this other workstation where they tape off the entire car except for the roof. And then it runs back through the paint booth again to get either the white roof or the black roof or whatever color roof you ended up with. So it's to me, it's shocking that it's only $900. Like it seemed like there's so much effort that goes into that. That was surprising to me. Like you'd think that maybe there would be an easier way, but I don't run car plants, but that was pretty cool. Like watching the marriage of the drivetrains was really interesting. Like the diesel and the gas motor, it's the same basic engine platform, 3-liter BMW, and they don't even care. They just like this one goes there and this one goes there, and watching the dash, it was super cool. It was really neat. For me, it was a neat thing to see. Yeah, and then Germany, then Luxembourg, then Belgium, then Amsterdam. Hung out in Amsterdam for a little bit.
Burning
did some
the
shopping.
eyebrows off?
No.
Long story.
Yeah, that is a long story. Yeah, the one of the few times in Scotty's life where he had some cannabis because it was legal. So and anyways, it didn't turn out well because I built a bomb and burnt half my eyebrow off. So
moving on.
Yeah. So then we shipped from Amsterdam on a ferry. There's a car ferry that goes from Amsterdam to Newcastle.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that was very cool. It's an overnight ferry. It's very nice. You can upgrade the rooms. We just parked the Grenadier down in the in the hull of it, and then you arrive in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And we went through customs and immigration. They were very confused by the plates and by my U.S. because the plates are from the U.K. Yeah. My passport's from the U.S. And they're like, "Where did you come from?" I'm like, "Cape Town." And the guy, he's like, "How did you get here?" And I'm like, "You want the short story or the long story?" He's like, "I would like to hear the long story." So I'm like explaining every country that I went through. And by the time he was finally over the story, because the story was either I'm lying out of my
stamp.
Stamp next, exactly. So, but he thought that was kind of cool. So, anyways, then we were in the UK, and I've always wanted to go to John O'Groats.
Okay, yeah,
so
you did go there.
The northernmost point of the UK. And the only reason why I knew about it was because of the long way round when definitely. Charlie and Ewan went all the way up there.
That's why it's on my list.
Yeah. So, and it was totally worth it. Scotland was a high point. Isle of Skye was a high point.
Isle of Skye is so great.
It was gorgeous. It was just all gorgeous. Food was meh, but everything else was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't there's good food in the UK. It's just
it's good.
But it's no different than average American restaurants. I mean,
I agree.
We just eat cheeseburgers and whatever. People just have their comfort food that they kind of eat.
Yeah, it's just you can get good food. You can't get great food, but you can get.
I would
food.
love to spend some time in the UK again.
Yeah,
and then I guess you drove down to the Grenadier pub.
I did, and I finished the trip. That was the full
And then said,
Full
bye,
Monty.
Felicia.
Exactly. Yeah, and then the car was supposed to come to the United States, and then it ended up not. So,
Well, shucks.
yeah, exactly. So, but now I'm in the Quartermaster, and I'm digging that. So, I think that's about everything that we were going to talk about. Let me look at my list here. Oh, I'm using this new remarkable Color Pro. It is a distraction-free tablet, and like I'm not, this isn't like an affiliate link or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, for me, it's what I write on almost all the time now, because there is no social media on it. There is no browser. So I'll do all of my first drafts on here. So like if there's something that I think like, oh, I should look that up on Google to get some spec or whatever, I just put in some X's and a little note of what I need to look up, and I just keep writing. So I get all of the first draft done, and it's probably saved me 30 or 40% in my writing time.
Huh.
Yeah, because it's got a built-in keyboard, and you can also make notes on it and stuff like that, which I do too. But yeah, I think we hit all of our. Oh, and then you should talk about your uncle's Porsche.
Oh yeah, that's my newest project. So, the first car I ever drove, not like a similar make and model, but literally the car that, like, at age 4, I sat on my uncle's lap and got to drive his 85 911 Carrera, and he indoctrinated me in air-cooled stuff from a very young age. And the idea always was that I would get the car. And about a year ago, I got a call. I talk to him every week. It was like, you should take it. It's not running. It has some electrical problems. There's a point in which these air-cooled 911s were like really cheap comparatively, right? They weren't what they are today. So I have this 85 911 that is now in my garage. It's the first car I ever drove. I'll never sell it. As a gift from my uncle.
It will be the first car that Matt will never sell.
I won't. Yeah. So.
Well, you can't.
I can't.
Like that would be the douche move of the century right there.
So I have to do a full wiring harness replacement on it, though.
That's good, though.
Oh, it's a lot of work for somebody that doesn't exactly like wiring.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like wiring. It's that
you could call a friend, call Darren when you need to.
Yeah, I'm trying to do most of the work myself because I think that's in the spirit of the vehicle. But the plan with it is to do kind of there's 911 safaris and there's 911 rallies. My idea is to do the 911 travel. So to build it, to be able to drive it, you can take a 911 pretty much anywhere to begin with.
They've done the roof. They've raced the roof of Africa, raced a car.
Yeah, they just have good angles to how they're kind of done.
Totally, and the weights over the rear tires.
So if you just kind of looking at some rally suspension and like this, they make these tiny little baby 27-inch BFG tires, all-terrains that are like what everybody runs on them. I don't want to run a super big tire. I just want a durable tire.
Yeah, sure. That sounds so fun.
Yeah, so it's guards red. It has the champagne tan interior. It's the quintessential 80s 911, which I think is fantastic. And just trying to learn and do everything myself. Like I'm going to have to drop the engine and reseal it at some point, but trying to make it this little survivor travel 911 project. Like I think it would be so cool to send it to Europe one day or
we got to do it.
Drive it to Greece or something.
We got to do it. Go through Albania.
Because there's so many. I guess my idea with it is that there's so many places in the world where you just don't really need a built 4-wheel drive.
No, most of the places in the world.
Like I want to spend some time in Europe. I want to spend some time in Asia, and
the last issue of Overland Journal is a 356 in Uganda in like ankle deep mud.
Yeah,
it's like
and the 356s are perfect. I mean, they're not Volkswagens, but they're just mechanically so simple.
Yes,
as are 911s. Like there's not. And I mean, you want to talk about a car that's easy to get parts for? Not cheap, but easy to get parts for? 911, because they're everywhere, and they were always special enough to be saved. So, it'll be a cool project.
It's awesome. It's an awesome project.
It's probably do some Schumann seats and just kind of try and make it comfortable. Like there's a company that does electric air conditioning for them now.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to do that.
It has no AC right now.
It has AC, but there's the asthmatic blowing over an ice cube comparison.
Sure.
It's just not that good.
Sure.
But there's been so many advances, and it has like 3 different condensers. Like one of the condensers is in like the very front of the car and blows down with trunk air, and it's like,
Doesn't really work.
yeah. So,
And then what are you excited about? What are you most excited about for 25?
oh geez. Hopefully just traveling more. We're a little grounded. We've got a rescue greyhound that I've talked about before. He's just getting older.
Yeah.
So it's hard you make a commitment to an animal, and you have to see that through. So we're really just trying to make sure that he's comfortable and happy and safe and secure and all that. And I don't know, 25's a little, it could go a lot of different ways for us. It might be the year that we drive to Ushuaia. It might be the year that we go spend a couple months in Southeast Asia, or it might be the year that we hang out in Prescott and just, work on our business. We're launching this new Overland Kitted website that, we're trying to sift through all of the junk that's out there. Like Laura and I have such great experience in this industry, and we've been doing this for so long that we're kind of trying to curate some of the products that
what works.
We know what works, and I don't want to be like a large e-commerce retailer. I don't really want to do that, but I like helping people solve problems, and I like finding these little cool products. Like, we're bringing in like the Melville Moon stuff. It's not for everybody, for sure.
You bring in Indeflate. You're now selling Snow Peak, which makes some really good stuff.
I have Snow Peak stuff that I'm contemplating for, building out these product listings, and it's like, I want to use the beat up photos of like, here's what it looks like in 5 years after 300 nights of use.
Right.
And
I've definitely got some of those.
And we're trying to I guess the products that we've used and we've really validated just to sell that.
Yeah,
that's
great.
There's so much stuff on the market that just.
And you're doing some goose gear stuff?
Yeah, doing some goose gear. We're going to do a goose gear in the back of the Grenadier. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to get rid of the rear seats,
or maybe just one of the rear seats,
or just, I think you have to get rid of both of them, or keep them.
No, you can.
Oh, see, that would be like a no-brainer. I always like to have one extra seat.
Yeah. No, you can keep the little one back there.
Yeah, that would be cool. But I think that'll be fun. And yeah, I am just loving that Grenadier. I mean, the steering's terrible, but everything else about it is, it's really cool.
Which we like them enough that we want to go do a full podcast on.
Yeah, we're gonna do one. I mean, I bought mine. There's no affiliation with INEOS.
You went down. You didn't even get an employee discount or anything. Just walk down and buy one.
Yeah, but I don't know. What's 25 for you?
Well, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, my dad's in the hospital. Actually, while we're on the podcast, I got notice that he was out of his procedure, so
cool.
He's doing okay. So we'll see how that goes. So I'm just gonna kind of keep things on hold and make sure that he's good. I do have a lot of. Syria is gonna most likely be opening up. I have a lot of interest in doing Saudi Arabia, Oman, Jordan, northern Iraq into Turkey. That's of interest to me. If things open up in Sudan, one of my priorities right now is to have a motorcycle that is ready to go around the world, that is literally just sitting here in Prescott, where if any of these big opportunities open up, that I can just, it has everything organized in the panniers. It's ready to go around the world, and then I can just ship it very quickly anywhere I want to go, which might be to Addis Ababa, it might be to Saudi Arabia, and then I'm not worrying about left-hand drive, right-hand drive, different regulations. It's really easy to ship bikes by air around the world. So I want to have a motor. I just have to decide what that bike is going to be. I was leaning a little bit towards the new KTM 390 Adventure R because I want to be able to just go do really rugged routes, but KTM like may not even be a business soon. So like I think they're going to be fine. They're too big to fail, but
well, yeah, the problem KTM has is they were selling the same motorcycle like 5 different ways.
Yeah.
Like they would buy these other failing brands, and then like rather than
Yep.
we didn't need a gas, a Husky. I mean, they even had Husaberg at one point and a KTM version of the same thing. That's got to be tough.
But the new 390R is very compelling as a really remote, rough track bike because it's very lightweight. It has a larger fuel tank on it. It makes 40-ish horsepower, has cruise control.
Yeah, but you just don't need anything.
You really don't. Not for where I want to take it.
Yeah.
I want to be on the dirt for days at a time, and just a lightweight, high performance bike like that with a long service interval, so 3,000 plus mile service interval. All of those things allow it to be like a proper around the world travel bike. If that doesn't work, and actually I haven't decided. It's either going to be that or it's going to be maybe the Ducati Desert X. I really like that, but I should get something small.
I'm just sitting here looking at a picture of you loading a 1200 GS into a DC3, and I just don't know if I can imagine you in anything other than a GS.
Yeah.
Just like a big bike for a.
I know it's gonna look like a circus act with me on a little bike. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, whatever happens in 25.
Yeah, we'll see and we'll keep everybody up to date, and we appreciate everybody that listens to the podcast. You guys are the reason why Matt and I keep doing it, because we do get your notes on Instagram. Yeah. You can meet Matt. You can reach out to Matt on Matt Explorer on Instagram. You can reach out to me at scott.a.brady on Instagram. You can also check out Overland Kitted, which is Matt's newest venture. You've been doing it for a while, but you're starting to really spend some more time on it.
It's been a little bit of a side project that's becoming our main thing.
Yeah, so. Which is going to be awesome. I think the industry needs that really tightly curated stuff. So I think that's going to be a good thing. But we appreciate you all listening. Please reach out if you got any comments, feedbacks, things that you'd like us to do different or more of. We'd love to hear your comments on that. And we'll talk to you next time.